Hello, welcome to Jimmy's FM. This is just a random balmy night summer podcast out in the courtyard. You can probably hear the crickets. My name's James and I'm joined by my old friend, Matt.
Hello.
Hi Matt, how you going?
I'm fantastic.
Matt is a Perth expat, but he's back in town for Christmas. How are you going, Matt?
Oh, I'm good. It's wonderful to be back in the Wawa.
What's this? We're recording this on your birthday, in fact.
It is my birthday
27th of December.
Yes.
And 2015 for historical purposes. So where are you working? I mean, obviously you don't want to talk too much on live about it, but where are you working now? This is not at the op shop, which is where you were last time we talked.
Well, I'm now the HR manager for the entire organisation.
Also for the whole company.
Yeah.
Okay, wow. All right.
Yeah.
So
I've made
behind the scenes.
I've made a rapid transformation from, the height of my skill set being sorting the shoes to actually running the whole HR strategy for the organisation.
Awesome.
It is pretty awesome.
And this is, what, did that require moving to a different area, working in a different area of the city?
No. It's all in the same site.
Okay, yeah.
Mm. But we've had a very big year. We took over our equivalent organisation in Bondi.
Yeah.
So that involved a massive sort of expansion on all fronts. So
Okay.
the total number of staff has doubled in a year. It's been really quite a rapid period of growth. So
Do you have to go to Bondi?
sometimes.
All right. What's the commute like from where you are?
Oh, well, where I live, I can walk to King's Cross.
Mm-hmm.
I have to catch a bus to Bondi, but it's still, sort of a half-hour journey.
Yeah.
It's not far.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Do you drive in Sydney?
Sometimes.
What's it like? Fun?
Oh, driving in Sydney. It's different to Perth.
Yeah.
Mm.
I mean, there's a big
People
harbour
drive-
in the middle.
Well, yes, but it's the pace and the attitude of people driving is very different. It's kind of crazed. When I moved to Sydney, I had to get used to how drivers treat zebra crossings.
Yeah.
I think this is a good example because, in Perth, somebody will wait for you to drag your sorry ass all the way across the zebra crossing.
Yeah, yeah.
In Sydney, once you're one step past the midway point of that zebra crossing, the car will zoom past behind you.
Yeah.
And that's
right.
just the accepted norm,
Yeah.
which is
Okay.
very different to here.
Yeah.
So it's, I'm a driver who isn't afraid to use the horn,
Yeah. Okay.
and that comes in handy
Right.
in Sydney.
How about that's the one thing about the future I'm looking forward to is just not having to drive anymore, just have self-driving cars. Yeah.
Self-driving cars. Well, I'm an enormous fan of Uber now.
That's true. Yeah.
The Prime Minister would be very proud of me.
Yeah.
For embracing disruptive technologies.
Yes.
And, really, where I live, I'm not a stone's throw from any train station. I've got to walk 10, 15 minutes to a train, so I find that Uber's much more convenient. I mean, public transport isn't that cheap to begin with, and so if it's just a short trip, actually works out. Based on the convenience, it's much better to take an Uber.
So if you just want to go just from an inner city, like from here, we're in Perth, so from Leederville, which is only a couple of clicks from Perth as the bird flies, but it takes a while to just weave in. How much would that cost in an Uber?
Well, you see, the Uber minimum is $8. So whatever, however short your journey is, if it's less than that, and it works on two algorithms. It works on the amount of time you actually spend in the vehicle, as in whether you get caught in traffic or not, and it also, works on the actual distance covered. And don't quote me on this, but I think it sort of takes an average of those two factors.
Yeah.
But if you're less than $8, it'll always round you up to a minimum of $8.
Okay. Yeah.
So, from my workplace to my home, it's always less, but it rounds up to about $8, which is pretty decent.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have not used it in Perth yet.
Have you used it elsewhere? Because
No.
I've used it.
Actually, yeah, I have not used it at all.
I've used it in Melbourne. I've used it in London.
Yeah.
And that was where I really got onto it because my friend in London was using it, and I mean we were out pissed as newts in some club in East London, and got an Uber back to her place in the south, and it was something, like I think it was 20 quid, 18, 20 quid.
That's the alarm to say the space station's flying over at some point.
Right.
Not sure where.
So it was about 18, 20 quid, and a taxi would have been 50 quid. So the savings speak for themselves, plus you're getting a nicer quality service.
Yeah.
You're not getting into some dirty taxi.
Yeah.
And I mean, some of the cabs in Sydney are just pretty revolting.
I kind of want to be an Uber driver once the legalities of...
Well, the legalities have been sorted out in WA. I mean, which is...
Well,
I can only go by what my extended family was telling me the other day, but I thought New South Wales, just the week before Christmas, has actually regulated Uber officially, so that $1 from every fare goes to the government to cover insurance and those sort of things.
Yeah,
which is just a good peace of mind.
I think they've said that they're going to do it, but it's not yet in place. And so the last time I was looking at signing up, people still getting fines for being Uber drivers. So I was just like, well, I don't need that stress in my life, to running away from trying to work out who's an undercover transport person.
Look, it is the way of the future, and I actually feel strongly that the taxi industry should take a hard look at itself when it's trying to lay blame for its demise, because they've refused to modernise.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think it's sort of it's out of their hands, though. Don't they have to pay like license fees? Like it's a big cost to get a taxi license plate.
I feel very sorry for your average driver because they're paying huge overheads that they really can't recoup.
Yeah.
And that's around the licensing arrangements. But at the end of the day, they're taking home $10 or $11 an hour.
Yep.
Which we shouldn't be allowing people to work for such a low wage in this country. And if most people knew that, I think they would be appalled.
Yeah.
But no, with Uber, I mean, I ask every Uber driver I use how long you've been driving Uber, and I reckon more than 50% of them say, "Oh, well, I just started last week." So it's clearly on the uptake, but also, they tell me that they're averaging $35, $40 an hour.
Okay.
So
the one problem with Uber is I don't think they're actually a very good ethical company. Like they, everything you do is tracked, and I'm sure you've heard about it, but in San Francisco or in America, they've actually, they track journalists where they go, so that if they ever write something bad about Uber, they go, "Oh well, you obviously visited this brothel on this date, and we have that against you because we've got evidence to show that you got dropped off at that distance, and maybe it just happened to go to a business next to that brothel, but who's to know? We could just put the rumor out there, and they don't seem to be the most kind company on the planet."
Well, I don't know about that, but I can share that I recently...
But the idea is fine. The actual shit.
The idea is good. I mean, it's not to say it doesn't need some refinement. I've just gone through hell because I upgraded my iPhone, and then I had troubles with the new Uber app. And so I had to go onto their actual website and try and find some customer support.
Yeah.
And that was difficult.
Yeah.
I was on the website for 10 minutes before I found one obscure reference to an email address I could actually email for help.
Yeah.
Because my question just simply wasn't answered on any of their frequently asked question pages.
Yeah.
And as it turns out, my friend had signed me up. We were both a little bit pissed at the time.
Yeah.
And he'd obviously made a typo in my email address, which is a very long one. And so notwithstanding that, when you go to their reset page, you are asked to type in your email address. But
Yeah.
then it's not recognising what you type in. It's only sending to the email address they have on file.
Yeah.
So because that had a boo-boo, I was just not getting the reset
Yeah.
email.
Mhm.
And to make matters worse, I emailed them and said, I have done all of these things and it's not working for me, and I supplied all of the information and blah, 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 blah. And I got a very stock standard email back saying, oh, just go to this page and do such and such, which I'd explained in my email that I'd already done 15 times and it hadn't worked. So I found that rather frustrating. But about another 24 hours later, they emailed me again and sorted out the problem. So I'm all good to go again. And I will keep using their service because I think for less money, they're actually providing a better service than taxis.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, taxis definitely need a shake-up.
They do. I mean, I have to go to these early meetings in the suburbs sometimes. And, I'm leaving the house at 7:20 in the morning. Well, I need to know that I've got a reliable transport service. Yeah. And I have called a taxi and then called up at the time it was actually due and said, well, it's not here yet. And they say, oh, well, you should have told us it was an urgent request.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, it is now an urgent request because there's no taxi here, but I thought if I called one for a certain time, it would be here. But that's not the way they operate.
Yeah, yeah. So do you have, where is your social life based? Is it work based?
Well, in my council job, I have a lot of functions and social things I need to go to.
Yeah, okay. So you still an elected councillor?
I'm still an elected councillor.
How long has that got to go?
Well, that's a vexed question because the Friday before Christmas, the Premier of New South Wales announced that he would be completely disregarding the views of local communities, completely disregarding the expert analysis that councils have undertaken around their future sustainability and why we are opposed to forced amalgamations of councils. And he instead announced a plan to force the merger of councils across New South Wales. A lot in regional areas, but in the city area as well. And so the proposal for my council is to be merged with two other councils, producing a council area with 255,000 people, with vastly reduced local representation, increased rates for people living in my area, and a total loss of local identity. And we think this is despicable. So my council in particular is fighting this tooth and nail. But as we should. But it's been a very tough time and a lot of uncertainty going on for particularly the last 12 months and more intensely over the last 3 months. And now it seems clear that the government will have to go through a public inquiry in order to change the boundaries. They can't move legislation to just force the mergers because they don't have the support of the crossbenchers in the upper house, which is a good thing. But they'll have to go through this public inquiry, which we are hopeful will expose all of the issues and produce a roadblock that means that this doesn't happen. But it does seem that the government's intent with pressing ahead with it, and that'll be problematic for me and for the future of my area. You know? So it's not like I although I'm fearful of losing that job of mine, it's also a tragedy that the whole council will be lost and swallowed up into a bigger area that's not effective at protecting the specific local interests.
Okay, so I have two things. So that means you're actually considering recontesting your position, like, at the next election?
I don't know what position I would be recontesting at this stage, and I still believe there is a good chance that we can defeat the whole proposal for amalgamations. So it could be that I'm recontesting my position as a local councillor in my area.
They tried to do that here in Perth and we defeated it.
I know.
I did very little in terms of, I think I signed a pamphlet, but I didn't go to any of the rallies. But I live in the city of Vincent, which is basically North Perth, the sort of inner North Perth. And it's become we've actually had quite a few good councils over the last decade, and it's become one of the most vibrant areas of Perth. Not just because of our council being really good, but also the fact that some of the other councils have killed themselves, like Subiaco has become this gentrified zombie town where there's nothing interesting happening.
There's no
anymore.
life.
There's no life.
Gentrification kills diversity.
Yeah. And
So it's just an appalling trend.
And the town of Vincent really went to war. This is my local council, and they really said, look, we're going to turn, instead of dumbing down it, we're going to try and work to make sure that all the suburbs in our local council have their little niche area that becomes a bit of an urban village, and they've encouraged small bars to open and festivals to happen and allowed food trucks on the streets and people allowed to eat on the curbs and reduce all the paperwork to do all that kind of stuff, I guess. And
has that been well received by locals?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
it's
So, I mean, what that says to me is
Yeah.
you've got a local council that actually understands its demographic, that understands what's important to local residents, and it's delivering for them. So
But-
why do you want to shut that down? You know, as soon as you get a bigger council that's less connected to its local residents, has fewer representatives that are actually from this area. Because, I mean, we have 15 councillors in my area, and what we're looking at under the merger proposal is maybe we'll have 2.
yeah.
Well, how can they actually deliver for the specific interests that are important to people who live in those areas?
So just in our little council that's quite small, but it's one of the most diverse areas of Perth. We've got a really diverse cafe strip in North Perth, really diverse, which is a classical strip on Leederville and Beaufort Street in Mount Lawley have always been quite things, but North Perth has suddenly grown without diminishing Mount Lawley or Leederville, and also Mount Hawthorn just up the road has flourished without impacting the main classic strips of Leederville and Mount Lawley. And what the amalgamations want to do is the city of Perth, which is like the main council where the CBD is, wanted to absorb like Beaufort Street and Leederville because they're the famous sort of locations in our council, and so they have them under their wing, but also they're going to spread their iron thin. And so if there's any cool event that happens in Leederville or Mount Law, they're going to say, well, we should probably have it in Forest Chase or the new Elizabeth Quay. And, that's not going to help this area. And the rest of the council, like North Perth and Mount Hawthorn, will be put into Stirling Council, which is this just suburban robot council that literally cuts down every tree in case there's a bushfire in the middle of the city. And you go out to these areas and it has these suburbs under the council have no soul whatsoever. They're just like barren wastelands that, I kind of get, like when people say Perth's boring, I kind of get it. If you live in the city of Stirling, I get what you mean because they're horrible. Like apart from Coolbinia, I think, which is technically in the city of, once you go past that, it's just a dead zone, a zombie wasteland. And it doesn't have any of the character of the western or inner northern suburbs of Perth,
Well, half of Mount Lawley is in Stirling.
Yeah.
And
There's a big difference when you cross the...
Yeah, there is. And those people would much prefer to be in the in Vincent. But, I mean, a lot of it... And my aunt actually works in Vincent for the council. So I've got quite an insight into the successes of Vincent. And it's also about protecting local identity. Because a lot of what local councils do is responsible for development and for planning, big-scale urban planning projects as well as small-scale, residential developments.
Yeah.
And the development controls that they have in place are all about protecting things that are important to local people.
Yeah.
If you live in a heritage area, most people buy into that street or that suburb because they actually like old buildings and they want to see that preserved.
Yeah.
And, the city of Stirling is too big. It doesn't understand those specific niche issues about protecting local neighbourhood character. And it's just a one-size-fits-all approach. So you need to have smaller councils that are focused on those issues that are important to people that live there. I mean, where I represent people in Wallara, it's about heritage conservation is a massive issue. We've got some of the most significant heritage conservation areas in the whole country. And we're a harbourside council, so it's also about protecting people's views and having and their outlook to the harbour, as well as a whole range of ecological issues to do with the sustainability of marine biodiversity and that interface between where people live and the natural asset that is Sydney Harbour.
Yeah.
So it's and also trees, I have to say. I mean, we're very proud that there's over 40,000 trees in our council area, which is something like a 12 square kilometre area. It's very, very tiny.
Yeah.
But the amount of trees and the tree canopy is a significant feature that is noticeable to anybody that comes into the area. And compared to the neighbouring area of Waverley, where it's proposed to be amalgamated with, it's virtually a desert.
Yeah.
So that's something that people are very, very worried about, is that we won't see that
It's crazy that the
preserved.
there's only most of Town of Vincent is sort of heritage stuff, but there are some greenfield sites where they've taken down some old factory and built some apartments, and in 10 years the foliage, just the tree foliage and the is bigger than the suburb Dianella, which was a new suburb when I was a child, but has no excuses now. It's been around for many, many years, and it's like a desert. And literally, I have this new job now where I have to drive through Dianella, and like driving out there it's like 5 degrees hotter out there than driving into, even though they're the same distance from the ocean as Leederville and Mount Hawthorn, just because it is a desert without any trees. It's just baking in the sun, and yeah.
Look, it doesn't make any sense in a country like Australia with such a harsh climate that you wouldn't have more trees.
Yeah.
And, further to that, the practical benefits of trees, studies have proven that trees make people feel younger and more alive and more happy to live where they live if there's a large urban tree canopy.
Yeah. It's annoying because we had our street tree got termites or something, and they had to knock it down. We've tried to replace it with 20 different trees, and obviously there's something in the ground that keeps poisoning, or one of our neighbours is poisoning it because they're assholes. We don't know. But it's the people up here who had their trees taken down because of the wire dam problem have had replacements, and their trees in just the 10 years since it got taken down are bigger than any tree in Dianella. It's just crazy.
Well, I think it also, if you have good regulations around tree protection, you ultimately instill a culture in the people that live there around valuing trees. And, the only thing we can't stop where I live is the people, the state-owned corporation that controls the power lines coming in and just hacking away at the trees indiscriminately, really. And it shits me no end, because they do cut indiscriminately. They don't cut to maintain the health and the shape of that tree. So what you get if you just lop a branch off because it's near a power line is epicormic growth. Yeah. In other words, the tree's so stressed out it just puts out thousands of shoots, and you get all this messy growth, and then the whole shape of the tree is destroyed, and then the next time they come to cut it, there's more justification to just remove the tree altogether.
Yeah.
But the Ausgrid guys were there in my street trying to prune a tree the other day, and I must have been the fourth person that went up to them in the 20 minutes they were there and just said, "What the hell are you doing?"
Yeah.
And then they gave me a bit of lip, and because I hear it I live in a cul-de-sac, I could hear every word, so I went back and challenged them again and just said, people here care about trees. I don't give a shit that you don't care about trees and you're getting your jollies by cutting stuff down. This is important to us.
I mean, ideally, they should be, installing the NBN in the ground, and while they're doing it, putting in underground power at the same time, killing two birds with one stone, and saving a lot of money on that front. And then they don't have to pay people to cut trees back every year. Save money.
Yeah, it's very expensive to put it in underground, though. I mean, you're talking about $100,000 for a block of
Yeah, but
for one
if,
block,
if
which might have 10 houses.
assuming that NBN exists, they would be digging up the road anyway. They could be doing it at the same time and saving a ton of money.
Yeah, well, I was listening to some report the other day about some technology expert just saying that, Malcolm Turnbull must have been aware that he was giving us a second-class NBN when he was relying on copper wires and stuff. He has to be aware of what he's delivering, and the time to do it was,
His wife definitely has shares in some copper technology company. There's no doubt about it. He's going to benefit hugely from it. He's going to get a huge... Either that, or as soon as he retires from being PM or gets kicked out, he's going to get a huge golden parachute from Murdoch, who has Foxtel, and it protects Foxtel's monopoly here.
That's right.
It's
a shame more people don't know that, because you're absolutely right, and that is the point that really explains the government's whole approach, which is totally subpar and wasting a lot of money to deliver a product that's fundamentally subpar.
If they came out and said, "Look, we're scrapping it altogether, and we're just going to let private companies build out networks as demand requires," well, that would be kind of the conservative approach. But this approach is like, no, not only we're going to build it, we're going to build a product that no one will pay for, and we're just going to throw away $40 billion for a product that no one will actually buy. Like, by the time they finish building this subpar network, your phones will be so fast that why would you ever pay for a second internet connection when you already have one on your phone? It's insane.
Well, so much of the Liberal Party's agenda is delivering for vested interests. They have very little interest in actually delivering for you and me as the taxpayer, and giving us a good deal. It's a tragedy, but it's the truth. There's no other logical explanation for why you would deliver a copper wire based NBN,
and one that is gonna. It's already come out that it's going to be $17 billion more expensive. $17 billion, and they lied. Imagine someone just stealing $17 billion with the government, and yet Malcolm Turnbull, no one questions it, because people in the media, it's their vested interest to not, because an NBN would allow smaller media companies to rise and compete against them, so they don't want to report it because it's against their interest,
I thought that's what the Liberal Party was all about.
Yes, small business.
Letting the marketplace dictate the best price for the consumer.
I've come to realise that the Liberal Party aren't really represent anyone. That's not true. They represent corporations. Who has the checkbook that will pay for them. They don't have any policy that represents anybody.
Well, all the more need to reform donations laws in this country, and institute a system of public donations like they do in Canada, where donations to political parties are fundamentally capped, such that you can limit the influence that big corporations have on our democracy. Because ultimately, our government should be delivering for you and me.
Yeah.
They shouldn't be delivering for big corporate interests.
Exactly. So, going back early... So you were a bit unsure about how you, whether you would seek another term, but now you feel like this is an issue you have to see out, like you're going to...
I will fight the good fight for my council, but... So really I maintain an optimistic outlook that we can defeat the government's amalgamation proposal. I mean, I do think the Premier is, our Premier is a merchant banker. He seems to apply this maxim that economies of scale will always deliver better results, that bigger is better. But I fundamentally believe that when it comes to such a curious beast as local democracy, that maxim is completely inapplicable.
Yeah.
So... I'm confident that through this public inquiry process we can make the case, and that we can preserve our independence and keep our councils local. But if the government pushes through and sidelines the community's view, and I mean in my area more than 80% of people support that view, so it's strongly supported. But if the government ignores that and presses ahead, then I will have to reconsider my position. But I'm not really prepared to do that until such time as I have to.
Yeah. back to real life. I think you went to Europe this year,
I did.
going back a few months. Where did you go? This was a bit of like your sort of a delayed 30th birthday present, was it?
No, not at all. It
Oh,
was
it's just
an
an excuse to go.
No, it was a gift.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Both my parents were 60 this year, so
Oh, it's their 60th.
they wanted our whole family to be together in the Amalfi Coast,
Oh, wow.
which was just an absolutely sublime treat.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I flew to Paris. I had 4 nights in Paris, and then I went to London to see a friend for a week,
Mm-hmm.
and then I went to Amsterdam, which I just adore.
Yeah.
I love the Netherlands.
How long did you spend there?
Just 2 nights.
Yeah.
Then I had to meet a friend for a big dinner in Rome.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then I spent 3 nights in Naples. Finally went to Napoli, which was just a dream.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful place. And then I had a week in Positano,
Yeah.
Amalfi Coast.
And so were you doing a bit of a eating and drinking tour? Like, what were the highlights?
In Positano,
Well, like, what do you eat in London or Paris to start off with?
in Paris, the best meal was a fusion Japanese restaurant, French-Japanese fusion called Nanashi
Okay.
in the Marais area. Absolutely exquisite food.
It's probably an interesting combination because they both appreciate subtle flavours.
Very delicate, simple, fresh food. Had a beautiful swordfish with brown rice and a lovely seaweed salad.
Mm-hmm.
In London, I went to a place called Quo Vadis
Mm-hmm.
in Soho, which was one that my friend had a recommendation, and she was quite keen to try it, and we had the most amazing meal.
Yeah.
We both ordered the anglais, which is a particular cut of the veal against the liver of the beast.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a very juicy, tender. And not that I'm a big red meat eater, but I made an exception. And so this was served with a pickled walnut, with asparagus, and with a beautiful like horseradish type of puree.
Mm-hmm.
So just all the flavors were just absolutely explosive. It was that was probably the best meal. And then in Italy, I should say in Holland, I met up with Sean, Poppy's sister,
Oh, right.
brother,
Yeah. Okay.
who took me out to a restaurant that specialised in gin, all manner of gin and tonic, like you wouldn't believe, and mussels.
Mm-hmm.
That was a fantastic meal. And
Gin
then
and mussels. That's a
gin and
strange
mussels.
combination.
It is, but it works. Trust
Yeah,
me,
okay.
it works. And then in Italy, I mean, we ate at Michelin star restaurants a couple of
Mhm.
nights, but by far the best meal was about €30 a head.
Yeah.
And it's right up on the top of the hill. You have to catch this little transit bus to get up there, and winds its way all up the hill. It was a bit of a nerve-wracking experience. It was much easier coming down the hill after all the wine that we'd consumed.
Yeah.
But it's a family-run restaurant, and they brought out seriously 12 plates of antipasto.
Okay.
From the spinach to the bufalina to the prosciutto to everything.
So this is still in Amsterdam.
No, this was in
Oh,
Positano.
yeah, okay. Yeah.
And then they brought out 4 different pastas. Then they brought out about 12 different meats. Then they brought out about 6 different dolci.
Wow, I'm just hungry just thinking about this.
Beautiful wine that they made themselves, chilled red wine.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the night, they brought out their own limoncello.
Yeah.
But having a kind face, as I do, I was a target of the karaoke.
Oh dear.
Because the wifey of the whole family outfit was quite the entertainer. So
Mhm.
she came out and sang to us couple of numbers, and then she decided to involve people in the performance.
Yeah.
And I was sitting pretty much smack bang in the middle of the restaurant, and she took quite a liking to me. So I did sing O Sole Mio to an entire restaurant.
Oh, sole mio. Yeah.
Oh, it's much easier after many glasses of red wine.
Yeah.
But
Oh, wow. Sounds amazing.
the funniest thing was she brought out a number of different instruments as well,
Mhm.
like tambourines and whatnot. And then there was a sort of percussion instrument that stood about 1 metre high, and there was a rather bizarre family at the table adjacent to us. And my crew we were 8 people, so this table was just husband and what I suspected was a stepmother, and these 2 kids that were maybe 10 and 11, these 2 boys. Well, the younger one, I watched him have a shot of this homemade limoncello, and then he was just completely set off, and he took to this percussion instrument with willful abandon, like there was no tomorrow.
Yeah, yeah.
Meanwhile, the stepmother was just there kind of freaking out and not knowing what to do. No, it was a very, very, very fun-filled evening. So...
And that was Napoli?
To me, that was Positano. To me, that did it more.
And that
than...
was just you by yourself?
No, that was with the whole family.
With the whole family? Okay.
Yeah, so we all went up there. We had, amazing meals every night, and we went to 2 different Michelin-starred places when we were there.
Mm-hmm.
But my favourite meal was this one with the family restaurant at the top of the hill and the karaoke. I just thought it was fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
But one night also, because we rented a villa, which was just the best villa in the whole place. Had an amazing terrazzo, right, huge terrace, and the whole of Positano is built into the hill, and it's a very steep cliff going up from the beach. So we were quite near to the actual beach, but still with an amazing view. And anyhow, the housekeeper, she came and cooked for us one evening, and so she bought all the fresh ingredients, and she made all of the different antipasto, and then she made 2 different pastas for us, and I mean it was just and tiramisu. So it was just an absolutely wonderful meal.
Yeah, that sounds great.
We went to Capri for a day.
Okay.
We had a few different excursions, so we went on a little boat, and because we were 8 people, we could do stuff like that. We chartered this little boat for the day, and my mum kind of fell in love with the 25-year-old Italian guy that was driving the boat. And another day we went to Pompeii, which I'd always wanted to see. And another day we went to Ravello, which is up in the hills on the Amalfi Coast, and there's the most amazing, beautiful gardens up there that were really quite breathtaking. So that was really enjoyable too.
So what did you do on the boat? Is it just you just drive around and look for places to swim, or was it summer?
Oh, it was peak season.
Yeah, peak season.
It was just coming into summer.
Mm-hmm.
We went to Capri,
the
island of Capri, and we saw the Blue Grotto, which is totally run by the mafiosa. So it's €9 a person to go into the Blue Grotto.
Oh, right, yeah.
You're in the Blue Grotto for, I reckon, about 35 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got to get into these tiny little boats with these manky drivers, or people rowing the boats, who are smoking cigarettes and carrying on and asking for €20 tips minimum.
Yeah.
And it's just abject chaos. There's all these little boats trying to get into, because the entrance to the Blue Grotto, you basically have to duck.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's like at low tide, but it's from the water level to the top of the opening must have been like 1 metre.
Yeah.
So there's a rope, and the guy steering the boat, pushes the boat through and hauls you through using the rope.
Yeah.
And you just duck.
Yeah.
And then you go into this amazing sort of cavern that's underwater, and there's this kind of really blue glow
Mm-hmm.
inside the whole cavern.
Yeah.
But I have to say, I mean, the highlight of the day was probably just hanging out on the boat and finding a little bay where we could all sort of dive off the boat and have a swim. And
What did you eat on the boat?
we didn't. We stopped at a seafood restaurant.
okay.
Yeah, which was quite a funny story because we ordered, and we were starving actually.
Yeah.
And we ordered, and then our food didn't come out for about an hour because sitting 2 minutes after we walked in, the mafioso bosses walked in.
Yeah.
And there was about 6 of them, and they were huge boys,
Yeah.
massively obese people.
Yeah.
And I mean, they ordered so much food, they had to bring a side table in order to put out all of their plates of seafood.
Wow.
Yeah, so the poor old restaurateur was just totally shitting himself, and they had to just divert all of their resources into feeding these
Oh wow.
fat mafia bosses. And my mum was getting quite stressed that we
Yeah.
weren't getting our meal and everything, and I just said, Mum, there's nothing we can do, just pipe down, we don't want to get any looks from the next table.
Did you ever buy your own food to take home and make? Like, you go out and buy some meats and some preserves and make your own sandwiches at home, or?
No, we didn't, but to thank my parents for the trip, my brother and sister and I paid for a what was quite expensive, I thought, but then after we had the experience, it was worth every penny. We paid for a cooking class.
Oh yes.
Yeah, so we went into this seaside restaurant and had about 2 hours of cooking class. And like the first thing they did was pour us a glass of prosecco, so I knew it was going to be in for a good time. But I learned how to make arancini.
Mm-hmm.
I learned how to make eggplant parmigiana properly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We made, what was the sweet? Profiteroles.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and we learned how to make a proper tomato sauce.
Yeah.
And I've been cooking Italian food for a long time, but I learned elementary things that I had no awareness of, like about what to do with garlic and how much to put in and how little you actually need. But if you do the processes properly, you extract the full flavour.
That's true. I found that. I found definitely sometimes I've like, there's this creamy pasta that my mum makes that she calls carbonara, but it's not really. I think it's more of an Alfredo because it's creamy rather than, I don't think real carbonara is that creamy. But the more onion garlic flavor it has, the better it is basically. And I've made it on different occasions, and I've made it with literally like 2 whole, what do you call them?
Cloves.
No, like the whole
Heads.
the whole thing that's got like 20 cloves, and it's not taste as good as like, one where you've just had put 2 single cloves in, but you've actually done it properly or got the right kind of garlic.
Well, the right kind of oil.
Right kind of oil,
which
probably
was
the combination.
a huge learning for me.
Oh wow, okay.
You shouldn't use olive oil
Okay.
and heat it up.
Yeah.
Extra virgin olive oil should be used for salads.
Yeah.
It should be served cold. You actually fuck with the elements in the oil if you heat it up, and then it's not at all healthy for you. The way that olive oil is really healthy. So yeah, we were using just vegetable oil, but then just flavouring it with 2 or 3 cloves of garlic.
Mm-hmm.
Not any more than that.
Yeah. Okay.
And then he actually took the garlic out
Okay.
when he put the tomato in, so it didn't even need to stay in.
So he was just trying to put the flavour in the oil.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good.
And I've replicated the eggplant parmigiana since I've been home, but it's a lot tastier if you've got a deep fryer and you can deep fry the eggplant in the batter first.
Yeah, I have this wild fantasy of like getting, you know. Have you seen the movie Porco Rosso by Miyazaki? It's an animated film about this pig who was a pilot in a war, an air war in Italy, probably when fascism was introduced, and he has a base on an island which actually looks more like one of those Thai islands on the bay. That, you know, kind of probably inspired by places like the Blue Grotto, where he flies the players in under the cave and then goes out into a bay inside that's a circle. It's within the island, you know.
Well, just as an aside, you do get those beautiful islands that look like the formations you see off the coast of Thailand and Vietnam. Around Capri, there's some quite famous ones that you might recall from.
Yeah, well, I'm assuming
Bond films.
It's set in Italy, so I'm assuming he's based on places in Italy. But when I was in Thailand, I was like, wow, this looks more like the place that he was talking about. But I've never been to Italy outside of Venice.
When were you in Thailand? Was that recent?
2008.
Oh, okay.
I got dragged there by a friend.
Right.
And it was good because I got dragged there. I would never go there by myself. And, you know, it was a very gentrified experience. Like, you know, we stayed in a 5-star resort which was dirt cheap, as you do. You ate dirt cheap pad thai and fried rice, and you went on a boat tour out into these islands. The actual holiday was very the journey there was more exciting, because I went from Paris to Thailand, because I was in Paris at the time. My friend was like, hey, do you want to meet me in Thailand? I was like, yes. I've got nothing better to do. And I had to fly home to Perth anyway, so I was like, well, might as well go to Thailand instead of through Dubai, whatever I was normally going. And but on the train from my place in Paris to the airport, I got mugged. Oh. And I had to almost missed my flight trying to fly, get a police report in time, and then flew this weird through Bahrain, maybe? Flew through Bahrain instead of Dubai, and it was a bit weird. I sat next to this guy with long hair and in a traditional Arabian white thing. I don't know what you call it.
I don't know what you call that.
You know, white cloth.
I know what you mean.
And he took his shoes off. As soon as the seatbelt sign off went, he took his shoes off, left them behind, and disappeared. And didn't come back until the seatbelt sign went back again 10 hours later. I don't know where he went, but I was sure I was on a terrorist flight and he was in the toilet setting up a bomb. Because this was post 9/11. And it was just weird. Like, where does someone go for 10 hours on a plane?
That is highly
and leave
unusual.
behind his shoes. At least take his shoes with you, if you know. Because I was like, okay, he's leaving by his shoes because he wants people to not know it's him if the plane blows up, and the shoes will be evidence that they were at his seat at the time, so it can't have been him that. So, you know, these are the things you think put through your head.
But here you are, safely.
Yeah, it's paranoia.
Still alive and well.
Bloody Americans putting in my head. But that was weird. And then I got to Bangkok, and I was like, I had an hour. Well, I could have waited around because my friend got into Bangkok a few hours earlier, so they'd actually gone into Bangkok to a famous street, which is
Khao San Road.
Probably Khao San Road. Yeah, I just know that if you said that, then must be it, because it's the road you go to if you're in Bangkok. And so I was like, okay, I came out of the airport and says, look, I've only got an hour. I've got to meet my friend at Khao San Road. And he's just like, sure, get in. And he puts his pedal to the floor, and we're going down the freeway at like 160 k's an hour when he's going slow. Like, that's his slow speed when he's almost approaching the bumper of the person in front of him. And it was the scariest ride of my life. Didn't think I'd get out of it alive. Because I was just like, this is the dodgy old Toyota Camry from 1980. And he's just coming up to cars and just pumping the brakes. I'm like, this brake is going to fail at this speed. Sure, I'm sure he's an experienced driver. He can probably deal with random interactions at that 180 kilometer hour speed. But what if there's a technical failure? Very scary. And we got to Khalsan Road, and we got there, and I was just like, oh, well, we might as well go back. So I met my friend at Khalsan Road for all of 5 seconds. I was in Bangkok, out of the taxi. Got her, threw her back in it, because I paid the driver to just wait for us, because I was like, oh, well, we want to get back to our flying time, so we might as well just... I'm not sure that I have enough time, because my flight came in late. And we fanged back to the airport at the same speed, the same driver, and it was just one of the most surreal experiences of my life. I recommend it. Get mugged in Paris, fly to Bangkok, drive into Bangkok at 160 kilometers an hour when you're braking in front of a car in front of you. Pick up your friend and then take him back to the airport, and then fly to wherever people go in Thailand. I don't even know where we went. I just got on the same plane as my friend.
Did you go south to see the islands, or did you go...
It was one of the places people go.
Right.
And I can never remember the name of it, but because she planned the whole trip. I just followed her.
Well, I've only spent a couple of days in Thailand, and it was in Bangkok. And after spending a month in Burma, I decided I'd fly back to Australia via Thailand and have a couple of days in a resort. And I was curious to see Khalsan Road. And, I'd spent a month in a country that was, just next door and totally impoverished and not ever modernized in terms of tourism the way that Thailand has over the last several decades. And, I did find it really quite a depressing experience to see how many, to see how they cater to, many an obese English tourist.
Yeah.
People drinking first thing in the morning and rocking up to, get their feet massaged on the street. And, but it's really quite chauvinistic and imperialist and disgusting. I had a hard time with it, but the other flip side of it, I suppose, is that it brings economic prosperity to that society where they wouldn't otherwise be able to survive. So there is a valuable economic argument to it. I just think it's pretty... The attitude of many of those tourists is completely wrong.
Yeah, it's totally corrupted their culture. The places we went, obviously we only went to, because it was literally a tourist trip. We only went to the places where, and I'm fairly anti-tourist. Like, I hate tourism. I hate being a tourist. So I only went there because of the adventure of someone saying, "Oh, just meet me in Bangkok at this time," and it was kind of a romantic idea. So I went. But. I've been to Paris many times. I've never been to the Louvre because I'm just like, it's just a tourist trap. I don't want to be involved with that.
I didn't bother going to the Louvre this time.
Yeah.
I mean, I stayed in the Marais area, which I love.
Yeah.
And I just felt like a local for a couple of days, which was lovely.
Yeah, that was... I haven't really done that in Paris. I did stay once with one of the times I went, my uncle was living there, so I stayed in his apartment instead of a hotel, and that was kind of nice. But then he hadn't really, what's the word, assimilated to Parisian culture, so we didn't do anything Parisian while I was with him. And I stayed there. I rented an apartment. The 2000 trip, all I did was rent an apartment there for a month. So I guess I kind of assimilated in a way, but I didn't have enough money to kind of go out all the time. I had the same money I had in Perth, which at the time in Paris got you half as much as what you'd pay for in Perth. So
Yeah.
I spent most of my time just reading books in the apartment and trying to do some writing, which I sort of failed at. I think I have to go back again. Now I'm more of a prolific writer.
So what are you writing at the moment?
I don't know. I've just sort of finished a project, so I'm thinking of what to do next. And I kind of want to write a novel because I've never written a novel, even though I've been writing sort of screenplays for the last 3 years. And it's a very different art form, so I don't know if I can adapt. I've gotten better at the screenplays. I got a grant to develop my screenplay with the state government. And
So is that the project you've just completed?
well, I did it last year, and this year I got a scholarship to develop it this year, like where they paid for people to, read the script and critique me and say how to improve the next draft, kind of thing. Because filmmaking, it's it's very unsatisfying writing a film because it's basically just all you're doing is writing the blueprint for a movie. Not many people actually, at the end of the day, not many people ever read the script. The director reads it, the actors read it, a couple of people in the cast will read the sections that are relevant to them. It's not like an actual document that's an art form. You're just writing, you're just building the bones. You don't have nothing to do with the skin and the flesh and the hair and the makeup on top of that.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's a tool that you use to produce the finished product, which is the film, I guess.
But it's so hard to make a film that I kind of, I'm getting so frustrated about not being able to just say, hey, like you've had the your launches for your play. I want to have a launch like that and say, hey, this is a complete product. Wouldn't it be cool to have a party and say, here's my new novel, and this is an actual thing that you can sit down and read and have an enjoyable experience reading, or not, or hate it and critique it. But critiquing a screenplay is kind of like, I haven't even showed my mum or dad because they've never read a screenplay before. Like, if my screenplay is the first screenplay they've ever written, like, what are their expectations are going to be skewed, so they don't know whether it's good or not because they don't know what a screenplay is. I don't know how many screenplays you've written. I know you've written play.
I've written 3 plays, James.
Yeah.
None of them have ever been produced or
No.
performed, but
You still had a party to release.
well, maybe I wrote the play so I could have the party.
Yeah. Puts you under pressure.
What do you want to write a novel about, though? What's the drive here?
I just have these stories that I want to tell before I dead in my head.
So are these purely fictional, or are they derived from your life experiences?
Oh, a combination of both. They're fantasies. They're fantastical things. But look at everything that's produced today. It's all based on pre-existing material. It's either based on a book, it's based on a comic, it's based on a play.
Nothing is original.
Only one. No, even if you take away what's derivative of, literally, if you go to a movie, there's a 5% chance that it's based on an original screenplay. 95% is based on a book, based on a comic, based on a play. Because no one wants to take a chance on something that hasn't been tested in another format, Or it's based on a magazine article, maybe, or it's based on it's a biography, like, they did last year they had Stephen Hawking and Alan Turing were the big films at the Oscars. They're autobiographies. They're not the creation of the author. They are, but they're not.
They are, but the subject matter is hardly original.
I want to write something that is inspired by other things. Like I'm not an original person. Like, they're all derivatives. Like, because the reason I want to be an artist, because literally I go to read a book and I don't know what to read, and I'm looking at my bookshelf, or if I'm going to watch a movie, I'm looking at my DVD shelf or whatever the equivalent is, the iTunes store, and you go, I don't know what, I'm looking for something and it's just not there, so I'm trying to create the thing that I want to see or want to read. I don't know if you ever have that problem. You go, the thing that I want is not there, so I have to create it. Oops. It's not microphone. Have you been writing, Matt? You were a prolific writer when we were young.
I don't so much write for pleasure anymore. I've got so many other things I have to write for in my work that tends to exhaust me.
Yeah.
Mm.
Do you miss it, or
I do. I mean, I love writing.
Yeah. Mm.
You know, and in some extent, I can find fulfillment writing in that form. But I mean, I think if you have skill as a writer, then the greatest skill you can have as a writer is adaptability and to be able to write for multiple genres.
Yeah.
And you'd understand that going from writing a screenplay to writing a novel. I mean, it's vastly.
I haven't done that yet.
Well, but writing a novel is a monster compared to, you know, any other form of writing. It's the long form. And you know, in the moment, I'm having to write a lot of fluffy type of stuff that's much more inspirational and trying to motivate people, and I'm also, you know, have had the experience of working with a lot of people who have mental health issues and addiction issues, and working with them to extract material is extremely rewarding. But it's a very different form of writing to what I've been used to writing in a highly legalistic way. I mean, there's a total format of writing for the law that I was trained in that's different to writing for policy and writing for politics and writing for the media, which are all different forms that I've had to learn. But I think that's ultimately, if you have skill as a writer, that's where it lies, is in being able to adapt your different formats. And ultimately, any piece of writing has to have in mind who the audience is, and so that's often the point at which you figure out what your genre and what your style has to be.
So, do you have a burning idea that's slowly building in your head? Like maybe your journeys in the Amalfi Coast.
I don't have a burning desire to write anything down. No.
They're just verbal stories to be told, maybe?
Maybe. I mean, I think about travel in terms of collecting stories and life experiences that challenge us outside of the box. And it all happens in a context that's so foreign that it makes it believable in the moment, and all the more dramatic as a story to tell once you're back home.
I think the greatest gift of all is like being a verbal storyteller, because there's some people out there who can tell a great story, and you sit there and go, I don't think they've ever sat down and wrote this story down. It's all been processed in their head, and they've told a great story because they have no, on paper they have no inclination towards the arts, but they have this urge to entertain, and so they tell these stories, and they're almost oblivious to the fact that they're sort of great artists. I don't know if you've ever run into people like that who just... Maybe it's all a facade. Maybe they've actually sat down and written stories and formulated and put them in a process so that they can just verbally ejaculate them onto the world. But I think that's the greatest art form was all, you know, this is the caveman instinct, is if you know, I'm a terrible verbal storyteller, you know, that's kind of why I started Jimmish Famous, because I was like, well, maybe if I practice talking randomly to strangers, I'll get better at telling stories, but I don't do it regularly enough to ever get that skill up. But you just run into random people who just can tell us a great story, but they don't seem to be the kind of person that would ever pick up a pen and write it down. They're just journeymen or journeywomen. Well, I think that's okay. You know, so many cultures around the world have have an oral tradition, you know, that doesn't actually involve documenting or writing anything down. And it's more powerful in some respects, but... Sounds good. Well, thanks for joining me. Oh, it's been an absolute delight. On this radio journey. The world's most obscure radio station. On this beautiful, balmy evening. Yeah. I mean, if you were a big shot radio station, James, we wouldn't be sitting here in the open air having such a wonderful chat. Oh, definitely not. So,
take my hat off to you.
Thanks for coming on and being part of my project.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Bye for now.
Bye, listeners.